Hello there, and good welcome to my little arty corner here on YouTube. Good welcome. Not sure that makes sense, but it is Saturday the 22nd of October, and for me it's just after 10 o'clock in the morning. I've been awake for ages and I didn't sleep very well last night, but there we are. So you're most welcome here. It's day 22 of Inktober. I'm doing the Inktober Tangles challenge. So I'm going to get on with that. I'm going to do day 22 and 23 because Sundays is an awkward day for me to do a video. And I really need to get, I've got so much work to do for the book I'm working on. It's ridiculous. Anyway, so day 22 is a pattern called Tilewave. And this is by YuRu Chen, who's a CZT. And I'm going to just create a little border here for myself, like so. And I'm also going to do a space within like this, because both of these patterns are kind of ribbon tangles, but like with any ribbon tangle, you can use them either as they are or in other ways and forms and shapes and so on. I know you've got lots of options with them, whether you organise them into a ring or organise them into a grid even, because this one would work in a grid. But I'm going to do it as a ribbon, and what I'm going to do, I'm also going to do this with my pencil. I'm roughly going to divide these sections into squares because I use pencils and I'm not afraid to use erasers. Now these aren't exactly squares, but they will do. And I'm going to leave the corner for a moment because I've got to figure out how that will work. But the basic way that you do this is you start with the sides and you draw a spiral that way, and then we're going to do a spiral at the bottom. On this side I made the line quite straight, on this one I gave it a little bump up. Either way works. Then the next step, is to actually fill all of these in. So let me do that. And perhaps what I'll do is, if I do them all in one direction first, and I'm using a flexible nib pen here. Oops. Okay, the corners are going to be interesting, shall we say. So I'm getting variable line widths here, and I'm not worrying about which is the top and which is the bottom. I'm just going to keep going like this, and we'll figure out those corners when we get to them. Some of these I'm having straighter lines with the spirals, and some of them aren't spiraling very much, but they are still the same kind of idea. It'll work. It's because I'm not going very slowly this morning. So while I'm doing this, I'd just like to say a big thank you to everybody who has subscribed to my channel. I appreciate you all very, very much. And if you find yourself returning here time and time again and enjoying what you see, then please consider subscribing. And if you hit the bell notifications, there's a good chance that you may get notifications from YouTube when I upload a new video. Though I have to say, it doesn't always seem to work that way. So this corner is going to be an interesting one because I'm not quite sure what I'm going to do there, so I'm going to leave that exactly as it is, and we'll figure that one out in a moment. Thank you also for all the likes that you've given, and for the comments. I've still got a few now to reply to, so that's something I'll do my best to do today when I am uploading the video and so on, and sorting myself out for the rest of the day, I guess. Because it's Saturday, but I need to work, so. But I did want to do this first. This is a really interesting pattern. It's got shades of other patterns in it, but used in a different kind of way. So I'll come back to these. I think I'm going to have to go along the bottom. Yeah, I think that'll work maybe. We'll see what happens. And be consistent here, and we'll see how it goes around the corner. Okay, so that's the first part of this pattern. It's called Tilewave. It's going to be really awkward in the corner, but we'll be all right. I'm sure I'll be fine. I will. We'll be fine. We'll get there. Okay, so the next part of this pattern is to start from this spiral here at the bottom, and we're actually going to draw. Actually, they've got 2 steps. Oh, doesn't matter which way around you do them. We're going to connect that spiral to the other one, like so. And I'm going to try and do it a lot more neatly than I have here. So out and over. So we're sort of connecting them with a kind of arc that's going on here. This is where the problem is. I haven't got a spiral up in the corner, so I think what I'll do in the corners, I'm going to put a circle there. So I've got something to aim for. That makes sense. There we go. So I'll do this all the way around. Following one step at a time. Do you want these? Put the circle there, and then we can connect that one there. And I'll pop that circle in there, and then I can connect that one to that circle. So that's this step. The next step is actually, and we could have done this one before we did that one, but it's fine, is I'm connecting the bottom edge of this spiral to this part here, and if I want to, I can then extend those spirals. So we're creating an L shape there with spiraled top and bottom, you know, start and beginning, as it were. Which is another way of constructing this, I think. Is to draw the L shapes in and then add, you know, with the spirals at the top and bottom, or add the spirals to the L's after you've drawn them. And round the corner we go. This grid is really vexing me because it's so imperfect. Normally I'm so fussy about sizes of things, so this is a bit out of my comfort zone. But I'm hoping that once I finish this, that apparent unevenness will disappear. It's the corners that are really bothering me more than anything. So the next step then is to take from the bottom of this spiral and go up over here. So we're creating this shape inside here. So again, up and over, from the bottom to the top. Now I prefer to draw in this direction, but You can draw in any direction that you're more comfortable with. If you prefer to draw from this going backwards, that's fine too. We don't have the drawing police, thank goodness. Oh, look. I didn't do that one, did I? It's okay, I've filled it in now. And that's going to have to go as a little blobby bit there because I've made a bit of a mess of it. Not the best flexible nib pen for me to use, but it's the one I grabbed. The nib is a bit softer than I like because I'm quite heavy-handed. Either that or this is the first piece of drawing I've done today, which means my hand-eye coordination isn't exactly fantastic. And my emotional mood isn't the best today either. And that's a story that's a long one that I'm not going to tell. So this is the basic tile weave. We've got this lovely space here to do something with. And we also have this area here. So I'm going to put my flexible nib pen to one side. The suggestion that is made in YuRu Chen's Step Out is to have a line with a dot like this. And I think that's quite nice. I may want to put a break in, and me being me would quite like to have shapes like this because it starts to add that dimensionality here. And you know, I'm all about playing around with space in my drawings. So that's really quite nice. I said we've got these here. We could simply aura them, these shapes here. But you know what? I just think that this would look fab if we were to perhaps create a roll there. I'm going to thicken that line. And of course we've got that going on here as well. If you break them at the top, that also adds that dimension. So we really have quite a lot of volume dimension going on there. Okay, the other thing I'd like to do, and I'm sure there are going to be many more things I'm going to do, is this is an exploration of this tangle pattern more than excuse me, more than a finished piece of work. So what I'm doing, this is only the second time really I've drawn this. So I am looking at this in what can I do to this? How can I vary it? This shape here is one of those ginkgo leaves, isn't it? So I'm going to play with that and bring that out as well. Just like that. So I auraed inside it to give a space from this. And I'm looking at how does that ginkgo leaf formed? It formed there and it went up and over, didn't it? Up and over there. So perhaps I can take this like that and we get that same kind of shape going on. It's a bit different because we haven't got it's a longer line on this one, but I am going to do the same thing. So I'm looking here, I've got the dark area opposite here, opposite that aura, and then I'm going to draw my little lines in to create that shape. That works quite nicely actually. Okay, I'm going to aura completely inside this, like so. I say completely, it's not a complete aura, is it? Because that would be around the other sides. I'm going to pop these in, that in. I haven't done any corner rounding or anything here, so that just helps to neaten everything up when you do that. I think so anyway. So I can do that here and here. Perhaps in the corner there. We've got some to go there, some there, some there, some there. And here I'm just going to, I'll add that in just to complete that inner space there. Okay, this I like just as it is, do you know that? But I'm going to do some of this kind of weaving back and forth. So I started with an aura there, then I auraed these sides, then I went back to that point down there, and then one last little one where I can have that black in the middle. And on these edges, I'm just going to add auras. And I think here I'm going to see what happens if I fill these with some happy little perks. That's where you sort of like stuff round shapes in, one behind each other. That actually is very similar to this. It's drawn in a similar way, in a different way or different idea, but you get a similar effect. So, okay, so let's have a look here. I'm just going to do that. I've got this bead here instead of a spiral, so I am going to add a little spiral in there as a nod to the others. But I've got I've got a different shape here and here. Okay, so I am going to aura completely inside this. And we've got this lovely space now, and I'm going to connect the corners in what Zentangle call coffering. And I'm just going to add another section there inside, auraing inside, and I'm just going to fill that with black, as if there's a hole there. And then these ones, this one on the end, I'm not quite sure how I want to fill these. I'm going to start with, when in doubt, add an aura, and then perhaps just simply add just some lines here and here to fill those sections in. And because they're not dark enough in a contrast, I'm going to cross hatch them. So I'm just drawing horizontally and vertically to fill those spaces in. Okay, I really did like when I auraed this simply like that. So I'm going to leave one like that there. I'm going to leave these ones blank. This one I'm going to add like that, but I'm going to add a dark area here and have semicircles going that way. I'll do another variation here where I'm going to see what I did. I joined the bottom of each side of the aura line with an arc, and then I drew an aura inside to give me the shape I need to fill that corner in. So we've got that going on. With this one, what I'm going to do here, I'm going to fill it with little humps, I suppose, or little leaves, little rounded leaves. I'm going to fill the little bits in between, like so. I'm going to do the same along these, and then I'm just going to put a little line in there. Because that line adds some ink, it darkens that space or the intensity of black there, and it just creates that. And they do look almost like they are folding over, so. And of course this would be perfect for adding flecks into, wouldn't it? So I said I was going to leave this blank because I didn't know quite what I was going to do. But I've added a teardrop shape there in the corners. Fill the space around them in with black. And then I'm going to put a tiny black teardrop in there. It's a bit ornate, a bit fussy, but you know, Let me do that again on this one. So we've got that there. I'm going to just draw a couple of auras inside. I think I'll have the smallest one black, because that feels the right thing to do. And then I think I'll just aura that and perhaps aura that in that kind of way, just to give that kind of space to find something inside. So quite like that. I like those. But of course we could instead fill this space with another spiral. Sort of, they're like mucas, aren't they? So this one as well. So I want to go from here, I'm going to go outwards. Simply because I think on the outside here I've got more space, so I can actually put more of these mucas in. So I'll fill the gaps around. Couldn't fit one in here. Could have if I'd really extended it, but we've got some here. So that's another way of filling that space. And I'm going to imagine there's almost like a dividing line here. And perhaps something like that. Completely total random shape, but it's something to start with, something to work from. These are all ideas. I'm combining things that I might not think work well together, but I can mix and match later on. This is the lovely thing about sketchbook work or explorations. I'm doing the same thing I did here, but can you see I'm mimicking the curve of this spiral, so it looks like they are bending over as well. So the others were quite straight, but here I'm going to have them bending back on themselves. I'll fill those little gaps in and then I'll just pop these little lines at the bottom, and that gives a nice feeling. And we'll have that there with that central part. I'll do that again because I wasn't quite sure what I was going to do, but I'm kind of following the central space, and then I'm going to create an aura. So that line goes through the centre of it, and that can then lead to some interesting developments. What I'm going to do on one side, I could colour it in black, but I'm not going to spend the time. I'm just going to fill it with lines. So we've got a darker side and a lighter side, and perhaps the lighter side. I could have the lines going in the opposite direction now, so it looks like it's starting to bend up, which is quite fun. Okay. Just going to fill that, leave those as they are. Perhaps just pop very narrow aura around there. Perhaps one on the edge. Could have done that. Because that would actually work. So we'll aura it that way. Ooh, that makes a nice interesting shape. So we've got these kinds of shapes going on here. I'm going to aura it again and put something black in the middle of it. So that's interesting. And again, May. Just going to put a small one of these on. I'm going to colour one in black, so we've got that kind of difference. What would be fun here really would be to fill all of this in black. But I think instead of filling it in black, what I'll do to save a bit of time and effort is I'm just going to shade it in like that. It would have taken me just about as much time to colour in black, because I'm going to go back and add these in just to darken this that little bit more. So that's an interesting kind of form. I do like the shape this creates here. It reminds me almost of something that's a bit like a stingray. Okay, so we can do that there, where we can create like a bead or something is tucked in here. So let's use that and do it a bit like a crescent moon, and that creates an interesting variation on the edge. This then, so we've got these sections. I'm going to do this here, and then we've got something that's a bit shell-like almost. So a different way of adding lines to create pattern and shape. It's quite fun. So this one, almost created a sort of like a rounded seed pod shape. Here it's going to be a little bit more awkward to do, but I will find a way to squash some of these seeds in. May not be identical, but the point is that it's similar. And then I'm going to aura this to do something to try to bring that shape out. Okay, we're nearly done. Isn't that amazing? All of these variations with, just very, very simple kinds of patterns. Okay, so I'm going to fill that. I am going to pop an aura that side and one this side, but I'm going to fill this whole section then with tiny little circles, tipple, just as a texture. And then in here, trying to decide what to do. My brain is trying to think here, and it's not functioning very well today. I don't want to fill it with any pattern, but I do want to do something. And I think the best thing I can do is perhaps to add a central kind of almost like a leafy shape here. And I'm just going to add some lines to add some darkness to it. Don't want it black. Okay. So here I'm going to leave the outside as it is. I will aura here and here, but I'm going to fill this with little spirals. So I'm filling it with a pattern rather than creating a pattern with whatever shape I have. So that's quite nice because it helps to bring that out. And keeping these outside edges is, sort of like quite simple, is also a nice thing to do, I think. Okay, I've done that again, but can I do this in the opposite way? Yes, I can. So instead of starting these auras from the spiral, I've started them from the end and created almost like a nice flat shape like that. And then I think I'll just aura these and start to perhaps just add some lines like this to bring this shape out. Perhaps a bit too much there. This one, I'm definitely going to do auras here. Oh, I didn't do that, did I? Where I did the shapes like that. That's fun. So this one, so I've joined that together here with an interesting kind of shape I'm going to bring out. It looks like a leaf tucked behind it, so let's go with that. And this looks a bit like a leaf as well, so I'll go with that one. And this one then looks like half a leaf. So let's pop lines in to say, or to suggest that is the case here. And then I'm going to do this one again. Yeah. Where I start here. And then I'm not going to fill it all in. I think I'll go that far. And I've got that kind of shape going on. So there's lots of tile weaves there. I might do some shading, but we'll see what happens. Now then, the next pattern is an interesting one for day 23, which is tomorrow. And this is Alitos, and it's by ClaudiaPbn, and who is also a CZT. So, and it can be done as a grid, it can be done as a ribbon. What I'm going to do is I'm going to do this one as a grid, and I'm going to use these here as my guides for where the squares are going to go. So I'm roughly making them fairly, sort of like, sort of like the lines connecting across, because I can. And it's an interesting pattern. I'm actually going to use one of her variations for part of this. So if I show you on the back, the basic pattern is that you have a, shall we say, a square, and on one side you have, on the two sides you have these kinds of shapes, and you kind of create a wobbly line between them, and then you can fill one side in with colour. So it's almost like you've got two pieces sticking together, as it were, which is quite an interesting idea. It sort of like links back to the tangle pattern from a couple of days ago, the walk the line. It's a bit like that, I suppose, but we're filling in. Well, it doesn't matter which side you fill in, just be consistent. But what I'm going to do is I'm going to draw those empty spaces in my grid, alternating them. So we're going to make almost like a checkerboard pattern here. And I'm going to connect them. Even if I have to put a little circle in there to connect them, I'm going to connect them. I think that's going to be the thing that I do right the way across, because I'm rounding the corners, and that means there's going to be a gap between them. So I will happily put a little black circle in. Now, what kinds of variations there can be with this, I'm not entirely sure, to be honest. We've got some really big ones there, and back to smaller ones. Okay, so I want to connect these together. So I'm going to go across here and occasionally touch this, but almost go down to the bottom where there is nothing. And then I'm going to come back up to the end. So I can do it that way. Now this one I could do in exactly the same direction, or I could rotate it, but I'm going to do it in the same direction here. But I'm going to give myself that space, or the edges, sorry, of the space. Like that. So I could carry on doing them all in the same direction, but what I'm going to do, the next row down, I'm going to go in the diagonal ones here, and I'm going to draw these in this way. Like so. Then this row, I'm going to do like the first one in this kind of direction. And the same here, I'm just going to give myself an edge on that side, and then I can complete it like that. And then this way at the bottom again. So let's start here. I do want it to touch both sides because I don't particularly want to make it that it has to be coloured in one particular direction. She says completely. Oh, that'll be all right. Like that. So we've got these connecting these other shapes. Now these other shapes we can do things with as well. Simply we could leave them as they are or add a shadow. So here I'm going to add just aura them, but with one I'm going to aura them to the left and bottom as I'm working on it now, on the outside of the shape, and on the other one here I'm going to add some line weight to the top and the right. And then how we add shadow to that will determine whether they're sticking up or sticking inwards. So this is a bit like Oysteroid in its way. It's not as random as Oysteroid, but we're certainly stacking blocks up or we're digging holes. And today I think I'm digging holes for myself. I could be. That's a whole different story though. But what can I say? So that these will become part of the pattern. Can also, and I am going to add an aura because I really do feel I need some distance between these sections that have got the wiggly lines in. But we can also add square spirals like so, and I am going to fill that black there, and I started a little bit over from the aura, so I'm just going to add some shadow. I'm going to do this to all the lines that are on the left and the bottom because that will add dimension to this. So if I do the same over here, I'm going to aura around the outside, Then I'm going to draw my spiral. So I start by going down, across, leave a gap, back up, across. Just keep going round. So I get to a point where really I'm, just be going back on myself. And for this one, instead of the left and the bottom, I'm going to do the top and the right. And I'm going to do the same with the box that the spiral's contained within. And then that will also give a different view. Again, it brings it out when you add shadow, but as I'm using this as the top, this one looks like it's growing upwards. This one looks hopefully like it's setting inwards, but it may not, because they can flip back and forth. It's not until you add shadow that you see the difference. So with the others, we could add anything that you can put into a box. So I'm going to do a pattern here where I'm going to start on each side like this. I'll show you what I did quickly, because I can draw bigger on the back. This is getting stuck in a sketchbook. So I drew diagonal lines, then I drew on one side to the centre, and then swapped over to the other side and drew an aura that side. Then if I look at this one, I don't want to draw a line here. I want to draw a line here to begin with, and here. And this will set me up for weaving, because I'm now going to just concentrate on each section and create a woven pattern back and forth. Now I know this is a Zentangle pattern, but for the life of me I'm not sure what it's called. Somebody will tell me. Is it hurry? Okay, so this one, this butts up there, so I can't do another one beside it, so I need to follow this line along. And I'm not going to worry too much about matching lines up from side to side. You can if you want, but ultimately it's not going to make too much difference, but you get the idea. Yeah, so I'm going to do that on this one. Smaller space, not so many repeats. Now that's different for me, isn't it? But the idea came to mind because I was doing some weaving in these ones. So that's quite fun. Another pattern that is kind of related, and I know this one is called Circus. And instead of weaving, we're just creating auras in these sections, so they end up looking very similar. Ideally, I'd like 3 auras in each section, but I'm not going to get it. I am going to fill the smallest one in though, because that'll be consistent. So we've got these. Okay, again, I'm going to draw an aura in because I can. And another Zentangle pattern. So I'm putting a nice big ball in there, and we're going to put this in there, which is one of my favourite patterns. And I'm going to aura these in that way, because I think that will just work quite nicely. And again, shadows and highlights will bring this out. Okay, so variation of that, we'll put that there. I'm going to draw all of these in. By all means, rotate your paper, and then I'm going to take the tip of the long ones and I'm just going to go along that edge and then just curl back inwards, and we make something that looks very much like a flower. I think this one is well, that's sort of like a variation of well. And of course we can then, I'm going from the corners inside to the outside corner. So I'm connecting them there. Oops, as I go wrong. And so I've got a little flower. So there's lots of ways of doing this now then. It's a very good reason I have this pen, because I'm going to just quickly fill one of these in for you to see. Very graphic pattern. I'm using black here, but if you like to use colours, you could use any colour you like. Perfect as well for adding gradients of colours, mixing colours. So you start with one at the edge and fade to another. Or having contrasting colours on either side. But as this is a black and white tile today, I'm going to stick to black and white. Which means I'm most probably going to end up using graphite for shading. Or not. My head is going towards alcohol markers, which is always a possibility with me. So I've got that, and I think it will look best, I think. Though it doesn't matter too much. I'll try it the other way very quickly on the other one that goes like this. I'll show you now. Okay, so with this one, I'm going to fill in this section in black. So I could do both of these sections going with the black on the other side compared to the one above, which would make an interesting kind of pattern as well. Didn't need to worry too much, did I, about those balls there? Okay, but instead of having this one with the black on the right, I'm going to put it with the black on the left. So it's almost like the black goes behind this particular, the square that's in between them, as if it flows underneath. So we get a different kind of almost illusion or an idea that we've got ink going underneath here, and then these ones on the top, they almost appear as if they are sitting on top of an inky black sea, perhaps. So land, I suppose. So we can bring that out with shadows and so on. I'll leave the others as they are for a moment. Okay, I think I will just grab, excuse me for a moment, let me grab I've got a graphite pencil. I'd prefer one of the mattes graphites, if I can find one. Bet you I can't. Oh, hang on, what's that one down there? Yes, we got a matte graphite, and I've got a fairly clean, let me just close my curtains so we don't have the bright sunshine streaming through. Okay, so let's have a look at some shadowing. So I'm going to put some shadows here and here on this one, around the edge there towards the corners. And let's see how that works. I want to leave that top there really white as a highlight. And on these ones we want shadow there and on the outside here. So along that edge and the top. These are Faber-Castell Pitt Artist, or was it Pitt Graphite Matte pencils. And they still have a bit of shine to them like ordinary graphite does, but nowhere near as much. Okay, so that's added some dimension to that. Let's have a look at these as well. So I'm looking at the bottom of this for shadow, and I tend to want to pop some along the left and the bottom, to be honest, because that'll be kind of consistent. Could have done with a smaller paper stump, but it is what it is. And it'll be fine. So, oops, as I scooch it across the page. So we've got some shading going on there. If anything, I could do with a lot more intensity here. Hard to get because I'm using a 2B. And 2Bs are darker than HBs, but they're nowhere near as dark as, say, a 4B or a 6B, which would be softer as well. So the harder graphite pencils are lighter in colour, but they're more difficult to spread out because they're harder. Yeah, I'm just going to pop some in the corner here. This one. These don't really want to spread, to be honest. We'll get it. And for this one, I'm going to pop shadow in the corner here and perhaps some in those. See what that looks like, where we have that darker as if it's bending away and the highlights elsewhere. That actually didn't work too badly, does it? It's not too shabby. A bit too much grey on that side. Here I'm going to add some shadow underneath this aura and perhaps some at the base. Definitely need a smaller one for these little areas. That's my problem, but you get the idea. And then I'm going to add graphite to the top and bottom of these little balls and just use that just to push it in. Okay. With this one, I want the shadows where these overlap, so that's easy enough. Wherever we've got them joining or overlapping together, that's where we're adding the shadows to begin with. So let's have a look at that and see how that looks. So we've got that. So that very much looks like it's creased down and these are fading away. So with that in mind, I'm just going to add a hint of shadow on the tip, there and there, which will help with that idea of it bending over. With these, pretty much like elsewhere where we have the shadows bottom and perhaps a little bit at the top. Like so. And here. Just want to add some shadows along the edge perhaps, there. And here, so I'm not going to blend these ones out because I'm taking my time to make sure I'm putting the graphite exactly where I want it and as darkly as I want it by varying the pressure on the pencil and also by going over areas where I want it darker. This means that it's more apt to smudge because I'm not going to blend it in, but I get a better sense of the effect that I want. So a lot of these are going to be shaded in the same kind of way. I'm looking for ones that might be a little bit different. This one certainly can be because I can use my pencil to fill all of this in. And just to darken that up again completely. So that really will help with that feeling of it bending over. And I will just add a hint of shadow to that little corner there. Just as if it's bending over. And here I am going to add some shadow into these little pieces here and also here because they would dip away. Don't want them to spread too far. I just want that feeling of them being bending upwards again. And perhaps a little bit right in the tip where there might be a bit of shadow. This one, the guide is where there's lots of lines close together, because that is where we're suggesting the shadow is going to be. So we just want to add shadow around it. So if in doubt, look for where the lines come together or where they seem to be bending away into, further away than the top. So we've got some here that are bending away. So there we've got some shadow there, and I'm just going to pop some right along the edge here. And I'm just going to leave that as it is. Kind of adding shadow here as if I was using alcohol markers, and not really blending it out much. Could do with fading it out a bit. So we've got that one. This takes me back to my sketching days with pencil and using that density of graphite and different hardnesses of the graphite pencils as well. You can get some that are water soluble. I'm sure I've got some here somewhere. Probably. But I'm basically doing with pencil what I would do with pen, if I was using pen lines to add shadows, and so on. So we've got a sense there of how you can add shadows to these. Yeah, hope so. Okay, these ones, to bring out shadow around these, or to make them appear that they are sticking out, I'm putting shadow around, graphite for shadow around the black areas on this one, and I will use my blending stump just to soften that out. And for this one, I'm going to want the shadow on the inside here. And then again, I'm just going to blend this a little bit, just to fill about one side. So that brings that illusion of standing up or sinking in, I think. Okay. With these, I'm going to pop some graphite on this side because I want this to feel that this might be sitting underneath here and perhaps beginning to stick up a bit. Not sure. But let's have a look. Kind of works. It certainly makes it feel like it's bending away. Okay, these ones, I said I was going to work with these. So what I'm going to do here is I'm going to put shadow in the tips on one side. So let me see. To try and keep that in those sections there. I don't want to spread it over. So that already has started to lift this up, but I'm also going to put some shadow on this side. Just a hint there of that appearing from underneath. So it's starting to lift, as I say, to lift this up. And then on this one, I can do it in the opposite direction. I could. Shall I? Oh, I've got two down there to play with, so I'm looking for where these fingers are sticking upwards. And I'm filling those with some graphite. And I am going to just blend them down just a teeny bit. And then I'm going to go back and add some more right to the tip. So with practice you can get tonal differences, it's called, where you apply increasingly more amounts of graphite or use softer graphite pencils to get these tonal differences, so you can fade from very pale to very dark. I'm out of practice, but you can see the difference between this and this one, how much darker these areas are, and how they give that feeling of being increasingly in shadow. So it just takes a little bit of practice to do. And of course we can do that with these if we wanted to. So let me have a look at these, and if we do this, suddenly we'll throw the black above the white, because it looks like it's throwing a shadow onto the white area, which is a bit fun. This one I'm just going to blend this out just that little bit. You can see that now looks like the black is perhaps overlaying the white, which is fun. And I'll do the same on this side, but I'm going to do some tonal differences there. And just blend that out just that little bit, just to get that kind of feeling that way. These ones that are, I've left white for now. That's my pen. You can fill these completely with black, absolutely you can, or you can fill them with pattern, texture if you wish. And I am with this one, I'm filling it all in with tipple. Again, it's that density of ink that suggests that we've got more shadow in some places than others. So I don't know if you noticed what I did here. I'm starting with really tiny little bubbles or circles, and I'm making them gradually bigger as I come down here. So there's less ink and more light, more white space. So it mimics the same kind of thing I've done here, where I've used a lot more shadow, graphite, than I have down here. So where it's darker, it looks further away and more in shadow. So I'm doing the same here with the sizes of the balls. And of course you can do that with anything. So if I use lines, I can gradually get the lines to become wider. And yep, I'm going to have to try and match them across. Consistency, kind of, but with an individual ones you can actually then kind of go off on your own, as it were, gradually getting them closer and closer together or further and further apart. So that's another way, something that was very common in op art. And of course you can combine these, there's nothing to say that you have to just stick to one. This one I'm just going to put some shadow right underneath these sections here. And I'm just going to do this by gradually increasing the amount of graphite underneath and then getting those tonal values with shading. So that works nicely, and I think it would be quite nice to have shadows or shadow to the left and the bottom of that particular section as if it's raised up that little bit. Could do that by thickening those lines as well. With these, I'm going to look at shadows on this one to the left and right of the lines that I've drawn. So just like these ones up here, I'm just reversing where I put the shadows in. And here as well, there'll be some on that side, as there are here really. So that increases that sense of volume with those as well. It works really well with this one actually, much better than the others, the original boxes. This one again, I'm going to put some shadow where these overlap, but this time I'm just going to put them in either side of the central lines, and I'll just use this blending stump just to soften the edges more than anything. And this one, I think this one would be fun to actually do shadows that cross. And it looks like it's dipping downwards then. This one, I am going to put some shadow just under the tips here. And I'm going to look at which sides. There we go. So that would be quite nice. Just that little hint there. So I hope this has given you some ideas for these two patterns. We have got, the two patterns are called Tilewave. I'll add that in here. I think I have shifted my table while I've been working. I hope I wasn't off screen too often. But we have here, this one here is Tilewave. Not Tileweave, Tilewave, isn't it? And the inner one is Alitos. A-L-I-T-O-S. So I can pop an arrow there and I'll pop an arrow there so I know which is which. And the last thing I'll do is I'll put my initials on. And I'll also put the date, which is the 22nd of the 10th, 2022 on there. And that then is, whichever way you prefer it, I don't think it matters really, is the tangles for days 22 and 23 of Inktober. So I really do hope that you have enjoyed these. I think I have knocked my camera as well, which doesn't help matters at all. I do apologise. I must have made a right mess, but the only thing I can say is my head really isn't in the right place today. My heart is, but my head isn't. So have fun with these patterns, see what you can come up with. Say often, the worst you do is you spend some time when you enjoy creating and you discover patterns that you like and some that you don't like, or you think, well, if I do that, I can work that one out. So I've had an interesting time here. I've got things that I wouldn't put together necessarily. I love the scrolling on this. I really do. And I think that if I'd put these lines going in 90 degrees to these, you know, sort of like going this way instead of this way, I think that could have worked really lovely, because they could have dipped down so that it would have been a continuity of that curling, as it were. But I can only see that now because I'm looking at my computer screen. So I'll say it again, I'll say thank you for joining me. Hope you've enjoyed this. Look after yourselves, take care, and find time to be creative. Ta-ta for now. Bye. Bye all.